Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today I am talking about introducing a new segment. This is a discussion on how the government has fared. Most of you would have watched the budget this morning and would have seen how Piyush Goyal has whitewashed everything that's been occupying the headlines, especially when it comes to the banking and the financial sector. Let's look at some of these issues. I think that the core issue here is the lack of accountability, or what I would say zero accountability on the part of everybody who has a duty to do something, whether it is the regulators who are supposed to be responsible for supervision, or it is the bank management or companies, directors, the CEOs. Each of them has failed to be held accountable in the last 5 years, and we are paying a price for it in a big way. So, at the end of 5 years, when you look at what is happening in the banking sector, I would say the government has been completely focused on high visibility programs like Jan Dhan, Swachh Bharat, demonetization, a badly introduced GST, and there is very little attention to making things work. Or for instance, when it comes to banks, they have been kept busy and they have not focused on their main job, which is banking. What has resulted is a spate of scams, and we as a country are going to pay a big price for it. So, I am going to start with public sector banks. To my mind, this is one segment that has been systematically weakened in the last 5 years. Like I said earlier, for the first couple of years, they were kept busy with enrolling people in Jan Dhan accounts. Then you had demonetization and there was a continuous rush of people coming to exchange money, so there was no time for regular banking. Then you had the rollout of GST while people were still coping with the after effects of demonetization. What do you have at the end of it? You have massive losses. It is not that bad loans was an issue that has happened in this government, but this government inherited the bad loan problem and they should have focused all their energy on tackling it. While the government held a Gyan Sangam with all bank chairmen and CEOs as well as the Reserve Bank of India, what they actually did in banks is to keep them headless. As many as 10 nationalized banks at one point of time did not even have a CMD. In fact, the government was busy trying to split the posts and made no appointments despite a bank board bureau being in place, right? After that, they tried to introduce what is called the Financial Resolution and Deposit Insurance Bill, which was obviously unworkable in India, and in the worst case situation, this would have converted depositors' money into equity to bail out banks. Will you believe this? Obviously, it caused panic and depositors began to withdraw their money. I think good sense then prevailed and this was stopped. But all this has a price, and that price was in banks not functioning and scams happening under their nose. So, the first and the biggest of them was the Nirav Modi and Gitanjali Gems scam. Here I blame both the Reserve Bank of India and the regulators as well as the top bank management. Bank management was busy with other things, so people down the line misused the system, colluded with Nirav Modi and allowed thousands of crores of rupees to be looted. But were these people unknown? Not really. Now let's look at another issue, the Bankruptcy Code. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is what the government touts as one of its biggest achievements. And I think today the finance minister, acting finance minister said that almost 3 lakh crore had been recovered because of this bill alone. In fact, if anything, one of the biggest achievements of the Bankruptcy Code has been that it allowed India to jump several points to number 77 on the ease of doing business. On the ground, sure, a number of courts have been set up. A few steel companies and power companies have found buyers. We've all celebrated that. But the key test is Essar Steel. Why Essar Steel? Because Essar Steel is the biggest willful defaulter and as a chronic defaulter. It has defaulted any number of times in the last 25 years. We, the media, have been reporting it for over 2 decades. And what happens now? This one group has been able to delay action. So, there is a 42,000 crore bid by ArcelorMittal, and all that they are spending time doing is fighting it out in courts. A glimmer of good news was at the end of Jan when the NCLT said that the bid by ArcelorMittal should be accepted, or rather the bid by Essar, which suddenly conjured up the plan to bring 53,000 crore out of nowhere, sources unnamed, and said it's going to pay back all debtors. Even while the financial market is jittery about IL&FS, you have another expose. It is called Dewan Housing Finance Limited. So you have Cobra Post, which a couple of days ago did a deep investigation, which said that this is a 31,000 crore scam. But it's not that this wasn't known. In fact, just after September, DHFL had just collapsed. Okay? The stock price collapsed because there were strong rumors that things were not right with this company. Now you have Cobra Post outlining what is wrong with this company. It has even put a number to it. This company again has borrowings of 1 lakh crore. Okay? And according to Cobra Post, the problem here is 31,000 crore. So if you have one IL&FS which has caused, sent jitters through the financial markets, you have another one in DHFL which is going to be a bigger problem. Has there been any reaction so far? Well, all we have is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs telling Reuters that we may start an investigation. In fact, this investigation should have started in September. And the real regulator in this case is not the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Yeah, sure, it has the Serious Frauds Office under it, but it is the capital market regulator which ought to do something. So it has to be SEBI's job. And there is another regulator, which is the National Housing Bank, which is its direct regulator. Neither of them have announced an investigation. In fact, a few months ago, there was talk of refinancing some of these housing finance companies because liquidity is an issue, because the market is nervous, because of another scam which is IL&FS, which means that before the election, the big focus is on trying to avoid a problem, trying to suppress a problem, and wait until after the election so that, again, it's somebody else's baby. And now finally, one of the most high profile ones of them all, which is ICICI Bank. We know that Chanda Kochhar had absolutely denied any wrongdoing. The board had stood by her. This again is an irony because we're talking about accountability over here. The board, with Mr. M.K. Sharma heading it, put up a big hoarding on the homepage of ICICI saying we stand by our managing director. What happens? A few months down the line, she suddenly resigns. I think she knew which way the wind was blowing. In fact, even her decision to deny any wrongdoing was based on a clean chit she apparently had got from a top law firm, which has quietly withdrawn a report that it submitted in 2016. I mean, how can this go on at all? So what you have now, you have a committee headed by Justice Sri Krishna, which has said that there was wrongdoing apparently on 6 counts, not one, not just Videocon alone. There is a CBI investigation, and suddenly the board has done an about turn, and it says that she is being sacked retrospectively and all her bonuses are going to be clawed back from 2009. Isn't it too late? The bank and its image has suffered badly, while the senior management was waffling, uncertain, didn't know what to do. And guess who is the most silent in all this? The Securities and Exchange Board of India. It administers a good governance code. There is a third committee report on good governance. There's a lot of tinkering about, little check boxes about what you do and what you don't. But when you have a big issue that hits you in the face, SEBI is completely silent. Before I end, let me not forget the Zee Group. Mr. Subhash Chandra, Member of Parliament, did something unusual. He came out and apologized, blamed negative forces, and talked about how he went overboard, invested in IL&FS, invested in infrastructure, and lost a truckload of money which belonged to investors, which belonged to him. He had pledged his shares. The point is, his stocks across the board, many of his companies fell anywhere between 26% to 33%. And then he was in firefighting mode, and he asked investors to give him a chance because he's going to repay that money and sell off what he calls a family jewel, which is 50% stake in Zee Entertainment Network. Is this all okay? Is the problem going to go away? Looking at the way stock prices have reacted, it almost seems as though some institutional investors are willing to buy it. But people like me who have covered the markets for a really long time can't forget that Zee and Subhash Chandra was deeply involved in the Ketan Parekh scam. Everything that they did was outlined in great detail, not by we journalists, we did of course, but even by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. It's all there. He got away with not even a rap on the knuckles because SEBI just let him off at that time under one SEBI chairman. Let's not go into that. The point is that there is a history out here, and investors, while pretending to believe him, are actually nervous. And where does this point again? It points to regulators being very benign, not looking at what promoters have been doing, not looking at how companies are run. And this time around, there is a huge difference, which is that in the last 5 years, we've seen a bull run like never before. And in this bull run, you had mutual funds advertising, mutual fund sahi hai, as though to say, don't even worry, as long as it's a mutual fund, you're safe. That safety is going to be called into question anytime now. Is it going to happen before the elections or is it going to happen after the elections? We don't know. What we know is no amount of good news budgets are going to make a difference. People are nervous, and the money of a very, very large number of people, millions of Indians, is going to be at stake, because if there is a problem with companies this time, it's not going to affect just 8 million or so investors who invest in equities, but a whole lot of people who put their faith in mutual funds and put their faith in what they were told, that this investment sahi hai, you don't need to worry. So let's see how the future pans out. Thank you.